Greetings, Guardians. I know it's been a while since I brought you a boiled video. Wait, I need to spell check that. But as I was grinding the Solstice event, I was working on the In the Hot Seat quest, and I was doing Lost Sectors. Is there a more efficient way to level up that progress? Probably, I don't know. But I have a lot of time to waste. And with that, I found this build. But for this video, I was using the Hydroplane Delta Lost Sector on Neomuna. This build's about Tommy's Matchbook, a 720 RPM auto rifle. It's listing 72 in the magazine, but when you use it, it has 100. The first thing we're going to talk about is its intrinsic trait, Ignition Trigger. Sustained fire with this weapon overheats it, increasing its damage but burning the user. Now to cover the catalyst. While Ignition Trigger is active, your health recovers much faster. Overheat damage is reduced while not aiming down sights. While overheated, sustained fire scorches your target. Now to go over the fragments and aspects. This build is for a Solar Titan, but it can easily transfer to the other two classes. We are using the Throwing Hammer melee ability, mostly for the on-hit pickup, grants you Cure. Our grenade of choice is the Incendiary Grenade. Our reason is it gives the most Scorch out of any of the grenades. For our aspects, Sol Invictus is our main one that we're going to be abusing. Solar ability Final Blows, Super ability Final Blows, and defeating scorched targets creates sunspots. Your abilities regenerate faster and your super drains more slowly while standing in a sunspot. Sunspot applies Scorch and deal damage to the targets inside. Entering a Sunspot applies Restoration. Our second aspect is Roaring Flames. Final Blows with solar abilities or ignitions increase the damage of your solar abilities. Stacks up to 3 times. Now to cover our fragments. Ember of Ashes is probably the most important one for this build. You apply more Scorch stacks to targets. This will help us get our ignitions much quicker. Ember of Temporary. Solar Weapon Final Blows grant you and your allies increased recovery for a short time. Stacks up to 3 times. And the amount of recovery it gives is 10 per tier. Now this affects your recovery stat, not your health recovery. While this is active, your weapons have increased airborne effectiveness, but that's not the part we care about too much. Your Solar Weapon Final Blows create a Fire Sprite. That will help with our survivability on this build. This is going to be our main source of recovery. Ember of Mercy. When you revive an ally, you and other nearby allies gain Restoration. Moderately useful, but where this one really picks up is picking up a Fire Sprite grants Restoration. Restoration, you regenerate health and shields over time, cannot be interrupted by taking damage. That is very important to this build. And our last fragment, which extends our survivability, Ember of Imperium. Solar Weapon or Ability Final Blows extend the duration of Restoration and Radiant effects applied to you. Now I will cover the armor mod selection. I will only be covering the bare minimum to bring this build online, to assist new players. Veteran players, slot in what you feel that you need. Now to cover the helmet. The only mandatory one for this one is Harmonic Siphon. Rapid Solar Weapon Final Blows create an orb power. Now to cover the gauntlets. This one has 3 that are mandatory. We're going to go with Harmonic Loader, increase the reload speed of solar weapons, fairly obvious. Heavy-handed. Your power melee Final Blows create an orb of power. And lastly, one that is currently disabled during the Solstice event, Impact Induction. Causing damage with a melee attack reduces your grenade cooldown. Now to cover the chest armor. This has 1 mandatory and 1 highly suggested. The mandatory is Emergency Reinforcement. When your shields become broken, you gain temporary damage reduction. Consume 3 or more stacks of armor charge, gaining a longer duration for the damage reduction for each charge consumed. It is a 10% damage reduction. At 3 charges, it is 6 seconds. At 4 charges, it is 9 seconds. The highly suggested mod is Charged Up. Increase the maximum number of stacks of armor charge you can carry by 1. That only takes it to 4. Now to cover the leg armor. This has 3 mandatory mods. The first one, Stacks on Stacks. Picking up an Orb of Power grants you 1 additional stack of armor. So every Orb of Power grants you 2. Our second mod, Better Already. Your health begins to regenerate immediately after picking up an Orb of Power. This will help prolong our survivability. And our last one is Intervention. Reduce grenade cooldown each time you pick up an Orb of Power. Now to cover the class item. I put on the Reaper mod. When you activate your class ability and get a kill, it will create an Orb of Power. But honestly, there's nothing that is mandatory on the class item for this build, so you could leave it completely blank if you don't want to add it. The exotic armor for this build is the Path of the Burning Steps. The perk of the armor is Firewalker. Solar Final Blows periodically grant you an escalating bonus to weapon damage. You are harder to slow or freeze with stasis, and when you break out, you take no damage from doing so. Also, creating a burst of solar energy around yourself. Roughly between 1 and 3 kills will grant you 1 stack of solar. You can hold a max of 4 solars. Being frozen gives you max stacks of 4. These stacks last 11 seconds in PvE and 6 seconds in PvP. Getting a kill refreshes the stack timer. At 1 stack it's a 10% bonus, at 2 stacks it's 17, at 3 it is 22, and at 4 it is 25% damage bonus. To give you a quick order of operations breakdown as to what happens and what perks and abilities are triggered. Getting a kill with your throwing hammer will create an orb of power from Heavy Handed, create a sunspot, and activate Sol Invictus. You will get restoration from Sol Invictus. You will get healing from picking up the orb of power from Better Already. And you will gain grenade energy from Intervention. On top of if you stand in the sunspot that the hammer creates. You will also get 2 armor charge from the 1 orb of power. Also, if you have the perk Impact Induction on, you will gain grenade energy, and you have a possibility of triggering Firewalker from the exotic. Now this leaves us with 2 different playstyles that we can proceed with. Now we can either use Roaring Flames, Final Blows with solar abilities, or Ignitions increase the damage of your solar abilities times 3. That will also trigger Ember of Empyrean to extend our restoration. Or our other playstyle, we can stand in a sunspot and abuse our uninterrupted restoration along with Tommy's hipfire mechanic to try and get ignitions on enemies. Now this is the point of the build, but it is also a dangerous playstyle, so you have to manage your pickup and heals constantly between fire sprites, hammers, orbs of power, and standing in your own sunspots. But this build has come a long way from what it used to be.